to say thank you to Fireman Glenn. I think you got to give him a round of applause for that was a lot of work. That was a lot of work there. Very well done. Well, what is in a name? Today we hear the gospel story of Zechariah and Elizabeth and the birth of John and how important it is that this baby boy gets the name John. The angel Gabriel spoke to Zechariah and told him that it would be called John. Elizabeth speaks of this himself, and then finally Zechariah confirms it by writing on the tablet that his name will be John. What's in a name? What is in a name? Did you know that the most popular baby's name in 2015 for a boy was Liam and Emma for a girl? You see, long gone now are the popular names of those born in the 1920s, like my grandmother and her friends. Elsie, Irma, Ernest, and Earl. The year was obviously sponsored by the letter E, I'm guessing. Second most popular baby's name in 2015 was Noah and Olivia. And the third was Ethan and Sophia. I checked just to see where David fell on that list, and it's number 32. So it's obviously losing a great deal of popularity. I have no idea. Did you know that Sophia, the name Sophia, means wisdom? Ethan means enduring. Noah in Hebrew means rest and comfort. Olivia means olive tree. Olive tree, but an olive tree that provides life in giving food and oil for the family, and the light, the oil for the lamps, so that people's homes will have light. Have you ever wondered what your name means? Looked it up, checked it out. You ever wondered why your parents chose that name? I'm guessing there's a story with every one of them. Open the magazine, Better Homes and Garden, and there it was on page 3. Lots of different ways that you can hear about your name. Ask about it if you don't. The name David means beloved. Keep reminding Stephanie of that all the time. So for which she replies politely and softly, Stephanie means crowned one or queen. Looking around the room here because I wasn't sure who all would be here, but there are a variety of different names. Karen from Catherine and Pure. John, God is gracious. We'll talk more about that. Amy, beloved in French. Tracy, no one really knew what the meaning was. It had a variety of things. Torture was one of them. Sorry. Despite those things, 311,482 babies were born with the name Tracy. So, Robert, German, for bright fame. So there you go. And then Larry, from Lawrence, which means Laurentium, which is a city in ancient Italy. Sorry. Clayton, a town of clay is where you come from. So
it's better than torture.
Adobe huts, Heidi. Marty comes from Roman god of Mars in the Latin, so Roman god of war. Norm, Northman or Viking. Ariel, Lion of God. Daniel, God is my judge. Well, you can all check it out. Seth, appointed by God. Bet. Well, the point here is that for us, the idea of a name and the meaning behind the name is more of a novelty than a necessity. It doesn't really, it says what our parents were thinking about, and often it was given to us because it honored a loved one in the family, the name of a great aunt, that we favored, and so somebody got the name Matilda. Or you got your grandfather's name, and hopefully the inheritance because you got it as well. More often, though, it's because we like the sound of it. We tossed it around, and we like the sound of that particular name. And some of you have heard my story about this, is that if we had had a baby girl, I wanted to call her Hannah, because I thought it was very lovely. It's also 23rd in the list of favorite names of this year. In Hebrew, it means favored one, a gracious one. Steph's middle name is Ann, and so Hannah and Ann, or Anna, I thought would rhyme better, so it sounded really well. And then Hanson. So Hannah Anna Hanson. Obviously, you didn't get to pick that. In the Old Testament, then, in the New Testament culture, the naming of a child, though, was very different. It wasn't because it sounded nice. It wasn't because it was popular or it was a celebrity name or any of those things. In the Jewish culture, the name had incredible importance because it carried with it the identity of who you are and where you are from. I refer back to some of us, you know Luke Hansen. We've been joking with Luke because of Star Wars coming, that we kept saying the phrase from the one Star that Luke, I'm your father. You know. In our culture, we immediately think of something that's popular or important and connects that name. But in fact, Darth Vader wasn't even around when Luke was born. Maybe he was, I guess, I'm not sure. But in fact, Luke is the writer of the Gospel of Luke, you see. He was a physician. He traveled with Paul and the others as the early church was just getting started. And more than that, he wrote down the words that God inspired him and the stories of Jesus' life and the life for a purpose. And if you read Luke and Acts, the purpose was so that people would come to know Jesus. Luke's name means light. And in the writing of that gospel, he not only brings salvation to people who come to accept Christ in their life, but also he brings light. You see how important a name and its meaning can be. It said something about who you are and what your identity was and what you would grow into being through that name. So it was very important when you chose a name. Now, a name wasn't always given at birth. Sometimes you wait a while to get the right name. But even then, that name can change. And if you think of a variety of stories out through the Scriptures, there are people who had their names changed for a reason. Abraham, for instance, was Abram. Abram meant father. And God changed Abram to Abraham to be the father of many, that he would be the father of the nation of Israel, and would be greater than all of the pebbles of sand on the beach or the stars in the heaven. Abraham's name was changed by God to be something different and more important. Remember Jacob, the scoundrel Jacob who cheats his brother out of all of that? His name Jacob means one who grabs onto the heel of the other, but also it means supplanter, a deceiver. And he changes the name of Jacob to Israel, which means God contended. In the New Testament, you have Saul, who in Hebrew, the main meaning for it is one who is prayed for. And he's renamed to Paul, to a Roman Gentile name, to be humble before God. That God takes his life and changes it and renames him for a purpose. It seems that God works powerfully in our lives when we come to know our names and we follow that identity. We are renamed to live in faith. The early church had a good sense of that because as it reached out to cultures that were different than it, it realizes that the change needed to be more important within the ceremony. And so at baptism, there was that moment where you received your Christian name. So the priest or the pastor would say to the people who were having an adult or child baptized, he would say, "What is your Christian name?" or "What do you name your child?" And they would say, John, or a different name. He would go from his pagan name of Thor or Asgard or whatever it would be to his Christian name then, and then be baptized into that, for which now that person in faith is living into who he is as a Christian follower of Jesus. Well, so what's in a name? Huh? Does it mean much? Well, it might mean more than we think, I guess. God is faithful to do what he promises no matter what the odds are of this. Now let's look at the characters in particular from today's text. You have Zechariah, you have Gabriel, you have Elizabeth, and you have John. 3 names of importance to us, and 3 names that should speak to us today about our faith. First of all, Zechariah. In Hebrew it means God will remember. God will remember. Think about what he did, Zechariah. He was a priest within the temple. I had to do some reading on this because I hadn't really understood this before, but there were a lot of priests in the temple. There were different divisions of priests within that group, and amongst those divisions there were several thousand that were within those divisions, and each one would take a different day, and they drew lots within their division to see who would go inside the temple to do the altar incense and to the other things. And so if your lot was drawn amongst 2,000 some people and you went in for that day, you only got to do it once in your lifetime. Isn't that interesting? And Zechariah was going to do it that particular day. He goes inside the temple, and you have to think about this because King Herod is ruling at that particular time. King Herod was not of the Davidic line. They had been waiting for the Messiah this whole time, and as Zechariah walks in, he's praying the prayers, comes to the altar of incense, and as he lights the altar, the incense there, and the smoke begins to rise, which is symbolic of the prayers of the people of Israel, Gabriel appears to them. Zechariah's name is God will remember. God will remember his promise. There's been 400 years of silence that a prophet has not spoken until this very moment. This very moment. And in that, Gabriel says and makes this promise that your wife, who is well beyond childbearing age, will have a son, and you will name him John. And he will be the one who will prepare the way for the coming of the Messiah. Now that silence is broken, and the irony of it, of course, is what? Zechariah goes, well, how's that going to happen? For which he's made silent through his entire pregnancy. He can't say a word. Now, the angel Gabriel, his name means mighty one of God. Think of 400 years, a stretch of time, and the book of Daniel, who talks about the prophecy of the coming of the Messiah some 600 years earlier. Think of the scope of time that God has within that. And the angel Gabriel speaks in a moment from here to here, and you go, God's view of the time and world is incredibly large, isn't it? And complex, for which we just wonder what's going to happen tomorrow. Yet God has all of this moving forward. Not only that, but nations will come and fall. Politics will come and go. Armies will fall.